high in the Sierra Nevada mountains of Northern California. The ground shakes as a heavy manifest train labors up grade on its eastward journey to North Platte, Nebraska. It will be well after dark before this train reaches the summit and the grade finally relents. The mountains have reverberated with the sounds of this battle for over 140 years on an historic route known to railroaders and rail fans as Donner Pass. Seven Idea Productions made several trips to this amazing location between January and September 2010 and offer images of the hill in winter and summer. See long double-stack trains battling heavy snowstorms on their first winter over Donner. Get a bird's-eye view of the main line from high atop Red Mountain and deep inside the snow sheds of Norden. Catch Amtrak's California Zephyr on the busy main line. Plus, the railroad's annual battle with the fierce storms of winter. This is Donner Pass, stacks in the high Sierras. Union Pacific's route over Donner Pass was originally constructed by the Central Pacific between 1863 and 1868, building west out of Sacramento. The following year, they met the Union Pacific at Promontory Summit, Utah, and the first transcontinental railroad was opened. Today, the Donner Pass route is part of Union Pacific's impressive rail network, covering the western two-thirds of the lower 48 states. The Roseville subdivision runs between its namesake city on the west and Sparks, Nevada on the east, covering over 140 miles. Most of the line is double-tracked, with two sections of the number 1 track removed in the early 90s by the SP. We will be traveling east to Sparks, and then making a wintertime visit to the hill between Truckee and Emigrant Gap. Our visit to Donner Pass begins at Roseville, located at the northeast corner of Sacramento, California's capital city. Roseville Yard, named J.R. Davis Yard in 1999 in honor of retired UP Vice Chairman Jerry Davis, is the West Coast's largest rail facility, covering over 915 acres. Nearly all rail traffic in Northern California moves through this yard, with destinations to the north, south, east, and west. The east end of Davis Yard is where you'll find UP's locomotive service facility and a fleet of the old SP rotary snowplows, which were designed for the heavy snows Donner Pass is legendary for. Although the last time these machines were used in snow service was February 1998. Flangers and spreaders have handled the task in recent years, but you never know when these amazing machines might be needed again. A cut of power moves through the yard on their way to the locomotive maintenance building, and soon will be back on the main line pulling freight for the UP. Their sooty appearance is a sure sign we're in tunnel country. The units pass the Roseville Amtrak Depot, which was built in 1994 to serve Amtrak's California Zephyr, running between San Francisco and Chicago, as well as local commuter service via the Capitol Corridor. Our first train of the day is the UP 4779 East. This string of autoracks originated in Milpitas, California, and is bound for Kansas City, Kansas. It is symboled the AMIKSR and runs a couple times a week. We catch the train as it departs Roseville for a trip over Donner Pass on a late September morning. Roseville is at an elevation of 160 feet. By the time this train makes it to Donner Summit, just over 80 miles away, it will have climbed to over 7,000 feet. At Rocklin, milepost 111, we find a high and wide detector guarding the eastbound number 2 track. Our auto-rack train is seen again as it was held east of Roseville for maintenance of way. It now has a clear shot over Donner Pass. As the last car clears the detector, we listen to the computer-generated voice reporting the train's condition.
UP detector, milepost 111.0, track 2, no defects. UP detector, milepost 111.0, track 2, no defects. Detector out.
At Rocklin, the eastbound number 2 track flies over the westbound number 1. This time we catch UP 4313, leading a stack train under the number 2 flyover. An eastbound manifest crosses over the number 1 track on a cool March evening. A short time later, a headlight appears on the number 1 track. UP 585 takes a flanger back to Roseville after spending the day on the hill. It may be springtime in the lower areas, but March can mean plenty of snow on Donner Pass. Milepost 120.2 puts us at the Newcastle crossovers, guarded by these signals. UP 7711 West takes a stack train into the night. Both the number 1 and number 2 tracks run side by side and share Tunnel 18 at Newcastle. Amtrak 5, the westbound California Zephyr on Main 1, meets an eastbound Manifest on Main 2. When the Union Pacific rerouted double-stack trains off the Feather River Canyon and over Donner, they were able to run much longer trains. Last year, taping in the Feather River Canyon, we considered an 8,000-foot train to be quite sizable. This train is just under 10,000 feet as it exits Newcastle Tunnel. In November 2009, Union Pacific opened Donner Pass to double-stack traffic, shaving up to 75 miles off the nearby Feather River Canyon route. Signals were upgraded, and clearance was improved in 15 tunnels to handle the taller containers. New notches are clearly visible in Tunnel 15 at Newcastle. Another westbound stack train rolls into Newcastle. The grade on the number 1 track at this location is a steep 2.65%, while the number 2 track on the left enjoys a modest 1.8%. The difference is quite noticeable here. Continuing up the hill on the number 2 track, we come to Auburn. A westbound vehicle train crosses Interstate 80 on the Auburn Ravine Bridge. This train is running wrong way on the bridge due to maintenance on the westbound Main 1. At Clipper Gap, we again catch the westbound number 5 with UP 567 on the point. The former Southern Pacific unit was added to the train at Truckee after the lead Amtrak engine had mechanical problems. and early morning empty grain train climbs the 1.5% grade at Applegate and enters Tunnel 28. The westbound number 1 track is just out of view above us to the right. We have arrived at Colfax, elevation 2,421 feet above sea level. This used to be where helpers were added to heavy trains for the climb up to Donner Summit. With today's distributed power, trains now can roll right through town. The eastbound manifest passes Colfax Depot. Built in 1905 by the Southern Pacific, the colonnade-style station was the terminus for the Nevada County Narrow Gauge Railroad until 1942. It was placed on the National Registry of Historic Places in 1999. An eastbound grain train passes the depot and rolls through the night. The tracks continue upgrade past Colfax and come to a big horseshoe at Long Ravine. Here, the grade stiffens to 2%. A brand new flange greaser has been installed near Cape Horn. With a 2% grade and numerous S-curves, greasers like this one go a long way to extending the life of the rail. Another empty grain train climbs through the S-curves as it approaches Cape Horn. We notice that the rear DPU on this train is not being used. Apparently, the crew had enough power from the two lead GEs to make this part of the hill. An eastbound KLTG4 stack train works its way to Cape Horn with an interesting power configuration. The first half of this train is made up of a short Oakland to Stockton intermodal, which is coupled to a KLTG4 train out of Lathrop, the lead unit of which becomes the mid-train DPU. The result is a power configuration of 1 by 1 by 1. The train is using the old original main around Cape Horn on Track 2. Instead of skirting the narrow ledge over the North Fork of the American River, Track 1 runs through Tunnel 33. At American, the railroad again skirts a ridge high above the American River as our eastbound autorack train meets a Chicago to Lathrop Z on the 2.2% grade. Shadows grow in the American River Canyon as we catch another Lathrop to Global 4 stack train laboring up the mountain. As dusk sets in, we move to trackside and watch a 132-car Roseville to North Platte manifest thunder up the mountain in Run 8. The next morning finds us at Blue Canyon, milepost 166.5, with a long stack train battling the 2.2% grade and tight curves. At Emigrant Gap, the grade lessens to a little more than 1.5%. This is switch 9, where double track ends. Southern Pacific removed the number 1 track between here and Shed 10, 8 miles east of here back in the early 90s, to cut operation costs. UP 7235 East takes grain empties through switch 9, milepost 171.9. The train disappears under Interstate 80 as we reposition our camera to catch the westbound Amtrak number 5, this time without any assistance. The eastbound stack train we first caught at Blue Canyon rolls through switch 9 on single track as it heads for Yuba Pass. At Yuba Pass, we find tunnels 35 and 36. The old number 1 track ran around the outside of the tunnels. This is the location where the famous City of San Francisco train was stranded for 6 days in a snowslide in 1952. Westbound auto racks appear out of Tunnel 36 and approach the location of the famous winter incident. Double track begins again at Shed 10, milepost 178. A westbound manifest train rolls through the shed and over Butte Canyon Trestle, a popular location for shooting trains over Donner. Right behind the manifest, we catch a westbound auto rack train crossing the trestle. If you look to the mountains above the tracks, you can just make out the old fire lookout at Red Mountain. Red Mountain Lookout was built to spot fires in the numerous wooden snow sheds that once covered Donner Pass. Red Mountain Lookout sits high atop Signal Peak above Cisco. This building, made of granite and mortar, was built in 1909 and replaced the original wooden shack. Believed to be the first structure ever built as a fire lookout, Red Mountain's windows face south at an elevation of 7,841 feet above sea level. This gave the watchman a bird's-eye view of over 20 miles of track from Emigrant Gap to Donner Summit. If the watchman spotted a fire in the snow sheds, he would telephone down to a dispatcher at Cisco, and a fire train would be called to the scene. The view from Red Mountain is fantastic and gives us a different perspective of trains in the Sierra Nevada mountains. A westbound ZSKDL reefer block rolls down grade between Cisco and Shed 10 in the morning light. The Central Pacific Railroad installed a telephone line between Red Mountain and Cisco in 1877, only 1 year after the telephone itself had been invented. Even today, evidence of this early technology remains. Red Mountain was used until 1934, but the last man on duty never came down. He was killed by a bolt of lightning while talking on the phone during his last shift. This is the same view that watchman had as an eastbound manifest works up grade between Yuba Pass and Shed 10. Returning to track level, a westbound intermodal train glides around Tunnel 38 at Cisco on Track 1. It will have to wait at Shed 10 for an eastbound. The train has stopped at Shed 10 to wait for an eastbound stack train to cross the single-track section of the railroad. The rear of the eastbound is clear of Shed 10, and the westbound gets a signal to proceed downhill. Amtrak 6, the eastbound California Zephyr, rounds a curve at Troy, milepost 185.5. Nearing Soda Springs, an empty grain train rolls under the old SP signal bridge at milepost 189. This is the same train we caught at Cape Horn earlier. We note this time that the rear GE AC 4400 is online and assisting this train up the 1.5% grade. In just 2 miles, this train will reach Norden and the summit of Donner Pass. An SD90 43 Mac prepares to take an eastbound manifest through Norden at milepost 191. This is the final stretch of the uphill grade over Donner Pass. The remote-controlled SD70 Ace disappears inside the snow shed at Norden as the head end approaches Tunnel 41. The snow sheds at Norden once housed a turntable for steam helpers that assisted trains to Donner Summit. Norden was also the location of staff housing and a dispatching office which was completely snowed over during the winter months. Taking a look inside, we can see where locomotives and snow fighting equipment can be fueled. This signal guards the derail on the old turntable track used for fueling. The hut for control point CPRV 191 is safe from the elements inside the sheds. Looking east, we can see the old original number 1 track curving off to the left, and the turntable track on the right, which dead ends just out of view. Light streams through the shed onto the old number 1, which was removed just east of Norden. Gondolas now rest in the weeds near the end of track. This section of the number 1 track was also removed by the Southern Pacific between here and Shed 47. Signals for the crossovers are still in place, but have not shown a green eye for through trains in over 17 years. The crossovers are still polished as the number 1 and number 2 tracks head out of the southeast end of Norden to Tunnel 41. From inside the sheds, we watch an eastbound stack train roll through Norden on the number 2 main. Stepping outside the east end of Norden, we catch another stack train taking the same route as it reaches the 7,000-foot summit of Donner Pass. After departing Norden, trains prepare for their downhill run to Truckee. A westbound stack train exits the 10,322-foot bore of Tunnel 41, also known as the Big Hole. Tunnel 41 was bored right under the 8,245-foot peak of Mount Judah and opened in 1925. A full moon and clear block greet us as we set up under the Sugar Bowl ski lift for a nighttime stack train. The light of a September full moon illuminates the original Central Pacific line, carved into the granite in the 1860s. This was the original transcontinental railroad built by the Central Pacific, meeting the Union Pacific at Promontory, Utah in 1869. The tunnels and snow sheds stand silent, high above Donner Lake and the community of Truckee, which you can just make out in the distance. From the original Summit Tunnel number 6 east toward Eder, the old number 1 track is almost completely covered with snow sheds and tunnels carved into solid granite. Driving through these sheds on the old railroad grade gives one a grand view of Donner Pass and really makes you appreciate the amount of work that went into building the first transcontinental railroad. Up close, these snow sheds are quite impressive. At the east side of Mount Judah, we meet up again with the number 2 track at Eder, milepost 195. A westbound stack train prepares to enter the Big Hole on the 1.47% grade. An eastbound stack train exits Tunnel 41 in the morning sun. The old number 1 grade crosses right over the top of the east bore. At Shed 47, we are treated to a great view of Donner Lake on a cool fall morning in the Tahoe National Forest. Shed 47 marks the beginning of double track again as a westbound Amtrak number 5 heads up grade. Later on in the day, an eastbound empty grain train rolls out of the shed on its downhill run to Truckee. The east side of the Sierra Nevada mountains drops off fairly quickly, so the railroad makes a jog back into Coldstream Canyon to maintain a decent grade. At Andover, we see tunnels 13 on the left and 42 on the right. Down below us, a westbound stack train is heard as it climbs out of Stanford Flats, heading our direction. In about 15 minutes, it will reach Andover and disappear into Tunnel 13. A westbound Chicago to Lathrop Z train climbs through the S-curves below the signal bridge near Andover. The trio of EMD SD70Ms makes a pleasant sound on the uphill grade. An eastbound stack train approaches Stanford Curve in Coldstream Canyon, which will point it in the geographic direction of Truckee, just 7 miles away. Welcome to downtown Truckee, near mile marker 208 on the Roseville sub. It's 6:30 in the morning as we take in the sights of this historic railroad town, originally named Colburn Station during the building of the Transcontinental Railroad. Truckee Station is used by the local Chamber of Commerce, as well as Amtrak 5 and 6 running between Chicago and San Francisco. The signal bridge at West Truckee shows a green eye for an early morning stack train out of Sparks. A small yard exists at the east end of Truckee, near a sawmill which was torn down years ago. The yard looks quiet now, but when the winter snows begin to fall, this becomes a key part of railroad operations. We'll show you why coming up. At Boca, east of Truckee, westbound stacks roll along the Truckee River. Track speed here is now 35, and the grade is just under 1%. Near Iceland, Amtrak number 6 negotiates a curve on its way to Reno. At Floriston, milepost 222, westbound autoracks head up grade on Track 2. It is interesting to note the difference in elevation of the two mains. We have crossed the state line into Nevada and are looking at the east end of Reno. This is Sutro Street, milepost 243.6. Train IG40A has just departed Sparks Yard and is about to travel through Reno, or rather under it via a trench. Completed in 2005, the new trench eliminated 11 crossings from the busy main line through the city. This meant less congestion for Reno and fewer crossings for train crews to worry about. We have arrived at Sparks Yard, around 140 miles east of Roseville. A pair of AC 4400s are spotted nearby, while a cut of cars get switched. Sparks is both a division point and crew change point for the UP, with the Nevada subdivision continuing east to Winnemucca. The Global Force Chicago to Oakland stack train is seen again, although out of sequence as it rolls into Sparks for a crew change. The train will also get a DPU added to the rear before tackling the stiff grades of Donner Pass. The Sierra Nevada mountains glow in the late summer sun. The seasons are about to change on Donner, and in the wintertime, these mountains take on a whole new personality. Donner Pass sees some of the heaviest snowfall in the United States. Its annual average precipitation is 54 inches. Since most of that falls in the form of snow, that translates to over 415 inches of snow per year. Wind is also an issue in the Sierra Nevadas. Gusts over 100 miles per hour are common when winter storms slam into the pass. This is exactly what we faced during our January 2010 visit to Donner. Despite the weather, the main line must stay open, and like the mountains, the trains themselves take on a whole new appearance. We are back in Truckee. This time, the empty yard is a hive of activity, as this is the base for Union Pacific's snow fighting operations on Donner. 3 spreader sets are seen in the yard, including the newly refurbished SPMW 4031 and 4032. Several GP38-2s have icebreakers and winter windows installed. At the time of our visit, double-stack trains were fairly new to the hill, having just come off the Feather River Canyon 2 months earlier. An eastbound rolls through Truckee, while a westbound waits for a clear shot through the Big Hole. UP 600 enters Truckee, pulling a flanger used for removing snow from between the rails. During our 5-day visit in January, UP 600 was always on the move, flanging between Truckee and Fulda west of Emigrant Gap, and even making trips to Sparks. After being turned on the balloon track, the 600 flanger is sent back up the mountain. Another winter storm is slamming into the Sierras, and crews will be busy tonight, keeping the main line open. As the flanger departs Truckee, the radio crackles with activity as spreaders are readied in the yard. The 600 diverges onto the number 2 track as it departs west out of Truckee. Moments later, an eastbound empty grain train appears on track 1 through the snow. The clear block for main 2 is for a stack train which will follow the flanger up the hill. Truckee is at an elevation of 5,817 feet, and there is considerable snow on the ground here. Snowshoeing into Norden at over 7,000 feet, we find considerably more. These snow sheds look a bit different than they did during our September visit. From the old number 1 track which was removed, we view a westbound stack train as it approaches Norden after exiting Tunnel 41. Snow is piling up around the lodge at Soda Springs as we set up on a snowbank to catch another westbound stack train appearing out of winter's white. The visibility has decreased as UP 600 flanges past our location at Soda Springs. Behind the flanger, an eastbound BNSF trackage rights train works up grade. Back in Truckee, the weather worsens as UP 600 is ballooned again and sent back up the mountain. Although it's hard to tell, UP 5710 is holding short of the Soda Springs crossing for traffic to clear through the Big Hole. The wind kicks up the snow as westbound stacks approach. Moving farther down the mountain between Soda Springs and Troy, UP 600 heads down Track 2, escorting the westbound California Zephyr, which is just a few miles behind. Photographer Kevin Dorn weathers a storm while waiting for our next move. Two spreaders are on their way back up the mountain after working down to Fulda. Soon they appear coupled together on the number 1 track, with the nose plow of SPMW 4034 cleaning the snow from between the rails as it passes by. The spreaders meet a westbound Z. Another westbound stack train passes our location near milepost 188.5. The next morning finds a temporary reprieve from the snow. Even the sun tries to break through the winter clouds at Troy, milepost 185.3. This morning, both tracks are out of service as two spreaders work west of Truckee, clearing the snow that fell overnight. The SPMW 4034 is in the lead, working the number 2 track, shoving snow onto the number 1. About 30 minutes later, the second spreader, SPMW 4030, kicked snow off the Lower Cascade Bridge. The spreader continues clearing the remaining snow off the number 1. Working up grade to the curve we visited back in September, UP 600 is again escorting Amtrak 5 on Main 2. Heading toward the Lower Cascade Bridge, we catch the ZCSLT, an expedited Chicago to Lathrop train as it approaches the same curve. Arriving at the Lower Cascade Bridge, we set up for a shot of a westbound stack train. As the afternoon wears on, the snow picks up again, adding another layer of white to the scene. Over 50 inches of new snow has fallen from the recent storms. Moving down to Yuba Pass, the 4034 emerges from Tunnel 35 on the single track. The crew pauses to extend both wings before continuing down the hill. After a long day of spreading on the hill, the newly refurbished 4031 leads the train back to Truckee. Their job is done for now, but with the snow continuing to fall, these snow fighters will be back on the rails soon, keeping the line clear over legendary Donner Pass. Thanks for watching.
Okay, got you lined up down the blue. Thank you, sir. Next door is the office there, Gary. Now we're planted on the other side of the office, so you got to dispatch of 7-4, UP585, showing you in the clear, main Truckee, over.
That is correct. Line and locked in the clear here, Truckee there, Battle.
All right, thanks guys, out.
Thank you, well.